Hey guys. So about 2 weeks ago, I sat down virtually with a guy I connected with in the Buzzsprout podcast Facebook community, Bill Crocker. Bill has his own very interesting show called ReThinking Podcast, and after listening to 3 episodes while in line to get a COVID-19 test, I've become a fan myself. And I don't think it's a coincidence that I tested negative for COVID-19. So I guess Bill is a bit of a southern lucky charm. He and I spoke for about 45 minutes on the record, and then another 30 minutes off the record, about a lot of things, including immigration and his unique experiences inside and outside the evangelical community. I had a lot of fun, and Bill was great, even if he's a Cowboys fan. We're putting the interview from Bill's podcast in our feed for your listening pleasure, and I encourage you to check out ReThinking Podcast. And now, for some rethinking.
Hi, I'm Bill Crocker, host of the ReThinking Podcast, where we discuss our biases and how to rethink those biases from politics to history, religion, race, and every now and then we'll offer you the completely biased opinion that the Dallas Cowboys are America's team. Find us on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcast. Hi, I'm Bill Crocker, host of ReThinking Podcast. Let's do some rethinking. I have with me today Gregg. He is a partner at the National Immigration and Medical Malpractice Law Firm, Kurzban, Tetzley, and Pratt, and the host of the weekly immigration case law podcast, Immigration Review. If you're interested in getting the most up-to-date information on changes to immigration law and are interested in the stories behind immigration decisions, check out Immigration Review. Before becoming a part of the Kurzban law firm, Kevin was a judicial law clerk for the Honorable Beth F. Bloom in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Florida. And before that, he was an attorney advisor in the San Diego Immigration Court through the Attorney General's Honors Program. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bill. I'm honored to be here. I'm really excited for this, and thank you for having me.
Well, I wanted to start off and give you an opportunity to be able to tell us a little bit about yourself. And obviously, I gave a little bit of background of what you do for a living, but if you want to just share with us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, kind of what got you into legal work, what kind of inspired you to do that?
I grew up in South Florida. I'm a Florida boy, and I went to the University of Florida, go Gators. And after that, I went and I spent a year abroad working in Australia, kind of doing manual labor, that kind of stuff. It's pretty easy to get an Australian visa. You got to prove that you've graduated high school. But I could take that risk because I had already been accepted into law school. So I knew I had my year and I'll go out there. And I did some times volunteering in Cambodia and Southeast Asia as well. And some of the people I met out there, they seemed like they had a lot to offer America, especially in Cambodia. And Cambodia is one of the more least developed countries in Southeast Asia. That and Myanmar are about the same, at least 10 years ago. And the only people I knew back then were the dean of the University of Florida, of my college program. And I emailed him about trying to get a guy who I had met in Cambodia over to America to study or through some temporary work process. And he said the answer is no, it just can't happen. And he didn't really know what he was talking about anyway. But now that I'm an immigration lawyer, I know that the dean was right. It is very difficult, if not impossible, for that person to come here to study. And that really upset me. This was also 2010. President Obama was in the White House, and I really did believe about doing good through the U.S. government, that the U.S. government can be a force for good domestically, of course, but also abroad, the beacon on the hill, all of that. And I still do believe that. And so when I came back to law school, I went to Boston University School of Law, and I wanted to be in U.S. government and to do good through government. And so I had an internship in D.C. in the Office of Immigration Litigation. It's kind of the appeals entity. They go around the courts and they argue defending the U.S. government's interests on immigration. And through that, I got the 2-year attorney advisor position through the Attorney General's Honors Program in San Diego. After that, there's a lot wrong in immigration. I am certainly an advocate for immigrants. That is what I do now. I'm an immigration attorney in federal and immigration court. And I believe in the rights of immigrants and good immigration policy in America. But I also saw a lot of bad working for the court. There are individuals who are not telling the full truth. A lot of them are desperate. And to be candid, if I was in some of their positions, I might do everything in my power to get here as well. Sure. But you got to be careful in immigration. I didn't think I was going to come back. I took a 1-year federal clerkship in Miami to come back, be near my parents. And quite frankly, if you get a federal clerkship as a lawyer, yeah, you take it. It opens a lot of doors, and it's an amazing experience. And I probably wasn't going to come back to immigration, but my clerkship was running. And then in November of 2016, something happened. And November 2016, President-elect Trump is talking about Muslim bans and all of these things that were horrifying. And my clerkship was over in March 2017. And I realized that Ira Kurzban works in Miami. Ira Kurzban kind of helped start immigration law. He's been doing it for 43 years. He's the founder of my current law firm. He writes a source book on it that's almost 3,000 pages long. It's kind of the god of immigration. Turns out he was in Miami, and he brings a lot of suits against the U.S. government as well. He argued before the Supreme Court 3 times in the 80s and 90s on behalf of Haitian asylum seekers. And so I wrote Ira Kurzban an email. And here I am. That's how I came back to immigration. That's how I got with Ira Kurzban. And that's how I ended up suing the Trump administration instead of being part of the U.S. government.
Right. Yeah, and we'll definitely get to that. I would definitely want to talk about the lawsuit that you guys brought against the Trump administration. That is definitely an exciting topic, and I want to be able to dig into that here in just a minute. I sent you a quote earlier this week to kind of give you an idea of where I would like to go. And so Lyndon B. Johnson said, "The land flourished because it was fed from so many sources, because it was nourished by so many cultures and traditions and peoples." You bring up the election of Donald Trump, and I want you to go back just a little bit before that, whenever he announced his candidacy for president. And he came down that escalator, and he got up there on that stage, and he said that in Mexico, they're sending their immigrants, and he said they're sending their rapists and their murderers, and I suppose that some are good people. What did that do for you as far as in your inspiration? Because I would imagine that working in the field that you work in, and the inspiration that you hold for immigration and immigrants in this country, and quite frankly, that our founding fathers held for immigrants. It is the immigrants built this country. What did that do to you? Like, just how did that make you feel?
Sure. So in that time, I had 4 months in between my immigration court clerkship and my federal clerkship. And for your listeners who don't know about law, I say clerkship, but you are an attorney and you're working for judges, helping them with decisions and that kind of stuff. I was in between clerkships, actually helping mentally, not working as a contract attorney representing mentally incompetent non-citizens in immigration court, but before the judges I had just clerked for. So that's what I was doing when he came down the escalator and he said that. And to be honest with you, the crass, cynical part of me that really cares about justices on the Supreme Court and good policies beyond immigration thought, well, this is great. This guy's never going to become the president. He's going to drag the whole Republican Party down, and Hillary Clinton's going to become the president, and we're going to get some more progressive justices on the court, and we're going to get some better policies in the White House. So my first thought really was, this is gross. This looks like the end of the Republican Party. I hate that this is us, but we've always had embarrassments on both sides, mostly, in my opinion, on the right. I thought that this, and maybe he was doing it so he could then go out and start a new type of Fox News entity afterwards. I don't personally ever think he wanted to be president based on things I've read and how he's acted. But that's what I thought. But as it progressed and as he became the front runner and all of that, I became horrified calling, I think it was right after he became president, calling Judge Curiel in the Southern District of California. I believe he called him that Mexican judge, that kind that kind of stuff, his attacks on the judiciary. It's horrifying. And, it just shows how the norms in this country that aren't actually codified by statute, how weak they are.
Absolutely.
How the norms can be run over.
Right. One of the big things that I am attempting to do in this podcast is to help us to understand the way that labels dehumanize us. Right. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I think that's one of the most horrible things that has been done in this country over the past 4 years is labels being attached to individuals, to humans. When we label an individual, it is my opinion that it is a subconscious way of removing our emotions from the situation. When someone is a client, an employee, an immigrant, a Democrat, a Republican, a liberal, a conservative, a snowflake, etc., then you don't have to imagine their plights, their struggles, their pains, their financials, their mental disabilities, their physical disabilities, what they've done to get here, their unemployment, their families. You can completely remove yourself from the fact that they are living, breathing human beings. And I believe that we have to stop labeling. And it was just over a year ago that I was judged on this position. And it was in response to a lot of these things that Trump has been saying, right? I mean, I pinpointed it down to one instance prior to his election. And I know that a lot of the pundits on the right were saying that this is all just primary talk. And that when he gets behind the podium of POTUS, that he will change and that he will mature into that position. And we have seen how silly of an idea that was. And unfortunately, that's not what happened. And so I was responding to that. And the accusation that I got against myself was that I was defending people who have come here illegally more than people who have always been here, was the way they put it, always been here, which, unless you're talking about Native Americans, you've not always been here, but that's another podcast. My response, though, to that was that, I wasn't trying to defend immigrants or Americans, is what it was apparently who they wanted me to defend. I was trying to defend people, nothing more, nothing less. People, human beings, and I feel like I will always defend another human being from dehumanization. What would you say is the impact of those types of labels, right? Because what Trump called them out to be were murderers and liars, and the most common languages he uses nowadays for labels is thugs and criminals. And if we just take the label away, then this is a living, breathing person. How much in your work do you see labels causing a barrier to recognizing the plights of your clients?
Well, amen to all you said. It's a great question. And I think it's what you're trying to do with this podcast. The people who are attacking you, I'm going to answer your question in a second, I promise. But I think the people that were attacking you, it's because people are thinking in a zero-sum game. They think they're right and they don't want to hear other sides. And so if you're saying anything not in line, they view it as an attack rather than open-minded conversation. We absolutely need to get away from that. Also, I think that President Trump knows exactly what he's doing when he's labeling people. I think it's not a mistake. I don't know if he always knows the history on the labels he uses, but he's got a knack for really bringing out that primal feeling in certain individuals, or instilling fear through labels, dehumanizing individuals through labels. In my field, absolutely. I mean, the legal term that I should use in my briefs when I'm talking about my clients in immigration court is alien. That the word alien is defined in the Immigration Act. It's from, I don't even know when, at least the 1950s, probably even the 19th century. It might predate extraterrestrials. I don't know. Either way, when you call someone an alien in 2020, I think it instills absolutely dehumanization. To his credit, Justice Kavanaugh will no longer use the word alien. I've mentioned that on the podcast twice. In his 2 immigration decisions this term, he's using non-citizen. The Ninth Circuit, I think, in full is using non-citizen over alien, but Justice Alito used alien. So it's a thing that's happening. I think it does absolutely dehumanize. I worked for judges for 3 years and immigration judges for 2 of those 3 years. And I'm going to be honest with you, when you're sitting behind, when you're assisting judges and you're sitting behind the bench, so they say, and a lot of what you see is on paper, you have to constantly remind yourself, these people are humans. Because if not, there's just another number. It's just another person. It's another sob story. It's even when you're labeling them right, it can be difficult. And if you're labeling them as non-human, or you're just watching it on TV. Absolutely. Very easy not to view humans as humans.
Right. Right.
And so yes. So the final answer to your question, every brief I write and all the evidence I'm trying to get is me trying to paint a picture of my client for the judge, because as you have to take the narrative, you have to take the factual and legal narrative.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I definitely appreciate that dialogue on those topics. I do want you to go ahead and take an opportunity to get into more specifics of this most recent case lawsuit that you brought against the Trump administration. I find it very intriguing, and I think the listeners would enjoy hearing about it. And this is in reference to the temporary protection status that the Trump administration removed, correct, from Haitian immigrants. And so if you want to just tell the listeners a little bit about that and the process that your law firm went through and the outcome of that.
Absolutely. And I'll start at the big picture and I'll get smaller and I'll try to speak fast. But, if you add up, so temporary protected status is exactly what it's is what it says. It's temporary protected status for a country. It doesn't get these people a green card, but it's because the idea is the situation is so bad in your country that even if you're in the U.S. illegally, we're going to allow you to be here temporarily and we're going to allow you to work until conditions in your country are safe. In Haiti in 2010, I believe it was designated in 2011, there was that horrific earthquake that killed, I believe, 200,000 people, made homeless 2-3 million, devastated country to a degree that no one in America could actually imagine, except maybe some World War II veterans who fought abroad, because it certainly didn't happen in this country.
Sure.
And that has happened for a variety of countries. So there is credence. There's, I don't know, about a dozen countries have had TPS since its initiation under the H.W. Bush administration in the early 90s. It's passed by Congress and signed by H.W. Bush. And, so some countries, it is not temporary. Somalia has had TPS designation since the mid-90s, and so that's a long time.
Sure.
And those people don't have a path to a green card except in some very complicated legal situations, but they are in America. Now, it's not every Somali, for example. It's not every Haitian. You have to have been here at a certain time unless it gets redesignated. So if, for example, while TPS for Haiti was legitimate, if you were Haitian and you snuck into the United States in 2017, you couldn't get TPS. You had to be here at the designation date, which I believe, again, is 2011. If it gets redesignated, it's more. So it's not just this grant to all peoples. But the Trump administration came in trying to do everything they could to get rid of all types of immigration, and the low-hanging fruit was TPS, because TPS can be designated by the executive and it can be taken away by the executive. The TPS statute is put in by Congress, as all statutes are, but what countries get it is a decision of the Department of Homeland Security.
Okay.
And so what the Trump administration did is it came in and it immediately axed TPS, well, almost immediately axed TPS for 4 countries: El Salvador, Haiti, Honduras, I believe, and I believe it was Nepal. The country escapes me. Amounting to about 250,000 individuals.
Wow.
And those El Salvador, those individuals in particular have been here since, I believe, 2001. There was a hurricane. And again, it's not all Salvadorans, not even close. It's a small percentage who were here during that hurricane in 2001. But they've since had U.S. citizen children. They've married U.S. citizens. I mean, these people have families. And when you get deported, you don't leave your 10-year-old in America and just go back to your country. And so Trump came in, took away TPS for about 200,000 individuals. If you include the DACA individuals, that's another 800,000 individuals. Between things, he probably came in within a year, had tried to take away the protections of about 1 million individuals, not including their U.S. citizen family.
Yeah.
And so the founder of my law firm, Ira Kurzban, as I said, he took 3 cases to the Supreme Court in the 90s and 2000s on behalf of Haitian migrants. He's been at this a long time. The first administration he sued for this was the Reagan administration. So, it's been a long time.
It's been a few years.
It's been a few years. And we filed suit against the Trump administration solely for its termination of TPS for Haiti. And we did it in the Eastern District of New York. The ACLU brought a lawsuit in, I believe it was the Northern District of California, on behalf of the first 4 TPS terminations. So parallel lawsuits. The NAACP also brought one, and a group of law firms up in the Northeast brought one. So there are actually 4 lawsuits challenging termination of TPS for Haiti. But our case, the case in the Ninth Circuit in the Northern District of California, it's called the Ramos case. They got a preliminary injunction before our case went to trial, but our case actually went to trial, and we put on witnesses before anyone. And our Judge Kuntz in the Eastern District of New York, granted a preliminary injunction against termination of TPS solely for Haiti, because we only sued with Haiti. And the reason we only sued with Haiti, and we did it with our co-counsel, the Mayor Brown law firm out of the Chicago office of Mayor Brown and the DC office of Mayor Brown, and with the National Immigration, the Guild, National Lawyers Guild as well. We're our co-counsels on that case. And we brought it for Haiti because Haiti has a specific history with this country. There have been blatantly racist policies against Haiti since the Reagan administration, since the various coups in that country and the turmoil that was happening. Actually, again, my boss, Ira Kurzban, when one of his first suits was in the Southern District of Florida, he had then, I believe he was Deputy Attorney General Rudy Giuliani, on the witness stand, and Rudy Giuliani perjured himself, and the 11th Circuit said he perjured himself in a footnote, but then they retracted that decision for posterity. But so, I mean, there have been blatantly racist policies treating Haitians different than white immigrants since the 1970s, and certainly since the 1980s. And we view this as an extension of it. I'm certainly not calling General Kelly a racist, but General Kelly has been very much involved with Haitians for 20 or 30 years. He was stationed in Haiti as part of his, he was sent, the America's Command in Haiti. So the players in this termination are very familiar with what's going on in Haiti. And I believe General Kelly, when he says he was DHS secretary, and then he became at the time Haiti, the TPS was terminated, he was chief of staff, but he was of the belief that temporary protected status should be temporary. It's been too long. The problem is that under the statute, conditions still have to be safe for the return of individuals. And conditions in Haiti are simply not safe for the return of Haitian individuals at this time. And if the Trump administration had done a good faith review of conditions in Haiti as they are required to do under the statute, then maybe we wouldn't have a cause of action. But the evidence that we obtained during trial made it very clear that this was an ends-oriented decision, that the Trump administration wanted to get rid of TPS for Haiti. The reports with Dick Durbin was in the room, Senator Durbin, when Haiti, when Donald Trump said, I believe he said, all Haitians have AIDS. Why do we need more Haitians in this country? Specifically focusing on Haiti. During discovery in the case, we already knew this, that the Department of Homeland Security Immigration Section has now been staffed at the political level with many, many individuals from an organization called FAIR. And FAIR is a explicitly anti-immigrant organization out of D.C. It's where Stephen Miller came from. It's where a lot of these individuals came from. A lot of the higher ones, like Stephen Miller, went to go work on Jeff Sessions' staff, and then they found themselves into the White House or DHS. And they've now all populated a lot of the higher-up positions in DHS. And the discovery in this showed that these political individuals were overriding career officials who know what is needed to be done with TPS, who are making a good faith, 20-page single-spaced analysis of conditions in Haiti. And you can see in real time almost with the track changes, it being edited by the political appointees. They, we got to this sounds like you're recommending a grant of TPS, a continuation of TPS. We're trying to terminate it. There's an email thread, and Judge Kuntz cites to this thread, in which one of the higher-up individuals, who escapes me, he's saying in all caps, African countries are toast. Haiti is up next. And that was because some of the African countries had TPS during Ebola. And then once Ebola went away, that was taken away. And no one sued over that and seemed legitimate. But clearly focusing on Haiti because they're of their race,
Right.
and because you don't want immigrants. And so the challenges we brought were both that you violated the law in the way you got rid of this under the Administrative Procedures Act, and that you did it for racist reasons. So you violated the Constitution. And Judge Kuntz, in a 150-page decision, agreed with both of those. And that is the preliminary injunction on the TPS for Haiti termination, and it's currently on appeal at the Second Circuit Court of Appeals.
All right. Well, that's the first half of the podcast. We appreciate you listening in. I hope that you've enjoyed me talking with Kevin Gregg this morning, talking about rethinking immigration. So we're going to go ahead and go into the second half of this now and discuss a few more things. I hope that, again, that you're enjoying it, and that you can find their law firm at kktplaw.com. Again, kktplaw.com. I'll put these links up on the Twitter and Facebook accounts, as well as you can find their podcast, Immigration Review, on iHeartRadio and wherever you get your podcast. We're going to have a quick 30-second ad, and then we'll pick back up on the other side.
I do want to ask you, I do have a little bit of a differing opinion from you a little bit. Of course, I haven't gotten into the specifics of this with you, but I know that you're very passionate about these issues of immigration, but I know that you said that you're not for open borders. Now, I know that kind of, it varies, right? In depending on how severe you're talking about with open borders, and I know people have different opinions on that. But for me, the way that I look at it is just plain and simple that borders are something that that we've made up, right? I mean, we create borders. Obviously, borders do not exist other than in what we have done with our own minds, and all of this earth is all of ours to some extent. And I realize conquest and all those things. And there's, they're like, we do have a stake to this land because military might and those sorts of things. I understand the reality, but what would you say is your drive to, because I understand also that you can't just open the door completely. So give me a little bit of background of where you're coming from with not being for open borders.
Well, it might just be from a lack of imagination, to be honest with you, which is a problem that I think that we have with a lot of things that scare people, that change in society. Black Lives Matter, people see that and they see new and scary, and so they reject it. So maybe that is what's going on. I don't know how that works. If you don't have enforcement at the southern border, then I do believe that you would have thousands of individuals a day, especially from El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, pouring into this country, maybe less from Mexico, but still a substantial amount. And I think very quickly you might get to the point where you have an overcapacity of individuals from an economic and a welfare standpoint, but also from a cultural standpoint.
Sure.
I love that we're a country of immigrants, but there is something to be said for the country, for the culture of a country, and it's great, and it's wonderful that America, like my great-grandparents, maybe like yours, came in and over many generations assimilated. Sure. But if you let in, if over the course of a couple of months you let in, 10, 15 million individuals who have not assimilated,
it's going to overwhelm.
It might overwhelm, but there will certainly be a backlash. And there has to be something. As much as I do not like and do not agree with a lot of the Trump supporters who talk about culture, I think it's a very human thing to worry about one's culture and way of life and want to keep it. And if you put a shock into the system, and this is just the cultural, putting aside the financial and the welfare, I think you do have to do it to a degree, or you lose the identity of America. And I don't think that a majority of the country would stand by and let that happen. So I think you would eventually have chaos. As a Jewish individual, the Jews don't usually do too well when there's chaos. They're usually one of the first ones to become the scapegoats. So, I mean, that is all to say. And so when I say open borders, I'm talking about anybody can come in and it doesn't matter. That wasn't even really the case with my great grandparents with Ellis Island. Although you had a you had an environmental border at that point
Sure.
because it took 3 weeks to get on a ship and to come across to America, and it was very difficult to do so. But that is not to say that I don't think we should be having much, much, much more immigration to this country, and that it should be a lot more fair, and that we should actually be a country that cares about the persecuted.
Right.
And so we have a lot of land. We have a lot of country. We're the wealthiest country in the history of the world. We could be doing a lot more, and we could still retain the America that the current U.S. citizens know, and we could still be helping. We would not overwhelm our financial system.
Right. Well, I would like you to help me bridge the divide here, because I think that everything that you just said, well, yes, I think like you mentioned, that is something that Trump supporters would agree with, a lot of the things that you just said. However, they seem to support everything that the president does on a lot of cases, and I think that a lot of times with these things, I don't know if even the Trump supporters realized that the Trump administration was trying to remove temporary protection status. Obviously, there's a lot of things that go on every day, right, within this administration that doesn't even make the news. That I don't think that people realize is happening and taking away people's immigration rights and things that are helping people in this country, as we should be. So help me bridge this divide here, where there is an understanding, because I would agree with you that to some extent there has to be an entry point, right? You can't just tear down the wall. I don't know that we should be investing a lot of money in building the wall, but I also understand you can't just completely tear it down and just say, come the masses, just come on over. So what exactly is it that is wrong about Trump's rhetoric on immigration, yet while still being reasonable in because I think that maybe there's a divide that's trying to be made there that's not really there. Like, I don't know that many Americans think that the gates should just be wide open. Mm-hmm. So, but yet that seems to be the narrative out of the Trump administration, is that if you elect the Democrats, they're just going to blow open the gates and everybody's going to come in. All the rapists and the murderers and the liars are all going to get in, right? And maybe some will be good people. But so how exactly does one go through this process of recognizing that, that there is reasonable immigration reform? There's reasonable things that we can do on immigration while not opening the gate. So where is that middle ground? Where do you see yourself where you're recognizing that there is a proper immigration process, but then there also should be protections for the immigrant themselves?
Yeah, it's $1 million question. You're asking me to fix the whole immigration system.
Please.
And I'll do my best. I'll do my best, and because a lot of it is broken. Before I get to that, I just do want to address a few things that your listeners might not know. It's, first of all, the wall is red meat rhetoric to the base who wants a tough guy who actually in private life is probably a weakling. But 40 or 60%, I can't remember the number, 40 or 60% of non-citizens who are illegally in the country or who are in the country without authorization, their visa overstays. They came in on a tourist visa or on some other kind of visa, and they overstayed it. I believe all of the 9/11 hijackers were either visa overstays or here on student visas.
That sounds right.
And even the Trump administration would still say we want students. It's upholding our entire secondary education system
Sure.
with the student fees that are being paid. So you build a wall, even if it worked and it doesn't. You're talking about 50% of the individuals who are here unlawfully coming in that way. And the smugglers they get these smuggling organizations that they'll go above it, they'll go below it, they'll find corrupt CBP officers. They find a way. The wall is red meat to the base, and it doesn't solve the issue, and it costs us billions of dollars that should be doing other stuff. Practical stuff, before I get to the big picture, I think your listeners might be surprised to know that we don't know when someone has left the United States. We don't know.
That's a good point.
So we have no way, and some other countries do. This has been in Congress bipartisan for probably 2 decades, trying to get this some sort of exit policy, so we know if someone has left or not, has overstayed or not. I'm all for that type of system. Let's know if someone is overstayed, because when when someone overstays, and let's assume that this individual doesn't have a fear of going back to their country. Let's just put the asylum people aside for a second. But when someone overstays their visa, if they don't leave quickly, I mean, they develop ties to this country. And once individuals develop ties to this country, you have to be pretty cold-hearted to want to kick them out when they have a U.S. citizen child, when they find love, have a U.S. citizen wife or husband. Developing ties to a country, becoming part of the fabric of America is kind of what it's all about. It's what my great-grandparents did too. They're assimilating, but they're the first step that they did, and maybe 10 years prior was unlawful. And what do we do with these individuals? We have a terrible framework for dealing with those type of individuals, because in 1996, Congress, which was Republican controlled, shoved the IRA statute down President Bill Clinton's throat, but he did sign it, and it was punishment based and it was disincentive based. So the thought is if you made it so horrible for people if they violate the law, then they won't do it. And that never happened. But we still have those draconian policies. So, for example, the individual if you have an individual who overstayed their visa, for example, and they have a U.S. citizen child, but they didn't get married, and that was 8 years ago. So they have an 8-year-old U.S. citizen child. That individual might not have any ability to stay in the United States with their 8-year-old U.S. citizen child. Now, after 10 years, they might have a basis, because the form of relief they can apply for, it's called cancellation of removal. You have to have been here for 10 years. But you have to show that your removal will cause extreme and exceptionally unusual hardship to your U.S. citizen child. And that is a very high burden to meet. And it starts incentivizing actually individuals who have children with medical problems. That's not to say people are doing that, making their children have medical problems, but it's counterintuitive. It gives you a benefit if you have a child who really, really, really needs you, because then you'll be able to show that hardship.
Right.
Our system does not recognize assimilation and community involvement. It is very, very harsh, which quite frankly is probably one of the reasons that a lot of people apply for asylum in this situation, because they have no other options. People talk, you should wait in line, you should do it the right way. If you are a Mexican individual and your brother is a U.S. citizen and he is petitioning for you, that could get you a green card. There is a 20-year wait. And the same if you're Indian, Chinese, or from the Philippines. And if it's not one of those 4 countries, it's still very bad. That is if you can do it legally. If you don't have a U.S. citizen spouse, parent, child, or sibling, you have no path to coming to America unless you are very wealthy. And so people say they should be doing it the right way. We don't have a system that allows for that. We have a diversity visa that Trump wants to get away from, which wants to get rid of, which is essentially, they call it the visa lottery. It's literally a lottery. You can win the lottery and come to America. And that sounds arbitrary, and there aren't many that get it. There aren't many spots, but it sounds arbitrary. But it's also kind of beautiful because, again, I don't know your history. My great-grandparents would not have made it to America in a merit-based system.
Right.
I don't think Elon Musk's parents would have come in a merit-based system, or Steve Jobs. There's something beautiful about coming here just being scrappy, young, scrappy, and hungry, to quote Hamilton, and just wanting to give a better life to your children and then doing it. Right. Because if you've already made it, you don't have that drive.
That's right.
The Republicans in the Trump administration, if they want to not just kill immigration outright, they want it to be a merit-based system. But that is not how you build America, and that's not who we are. We're a society of young doers who want to better their lives, and in the process, they better America. And quite frankly, if you want to do that, you need some arbitrariness. You need to let in the huddled masses.
Right.
You need to let in those people who are fleeing terrible situations.
Yeah.
So how do we make it so not everybody comes in at once and the floodgates aren't open. You do need enforcement at the borders. You could do it in a more humane way. The Obama administration made it in such a way, getting into very complicated analysis, but that people would come to a port of entry if they were smuggled here illegally, instead of trying to sneak in, because when you try and sneak in through the desert, there's hundreds of deaths every year, starving and being dehydrated to death in the Mexican and Texas desert. It's a horrific thing, and it's now happening again. But we need to do a better job of, but getting smuggled into America is also a horrific thing. The Mexicans are racist against the Guatemalans are racist against the Salvadorans. Everybody hates the Argentinians. It's not a pretty space. And of course, you're doing it with these very serious criminal enterprises. So you do want to stop smuggling as well. We as a country need to actually be out there and helping individuals come to America without having to get smuggled into America first. Instead of having people apply for asylum, which you can only apply for if you're in the U.S., we should be having refugee programs in all the trouble spots in the entire world, and having those refugee programs, which the UN runs, actually allow people to come to America. That's how the refugee program was envisioned after World War II, when you had millions of stateless Jews in Europe. It was supposed to be a refugee program. Asylum was the exception that became the rule that you could apply for if you were already in the country. But because we haven't gone out there and we haven't made it possible for individuals who want to come to America to get here without being smuggled in, we've developed these horrific criminal enterprises that are hurting us in other ways. So one of the ways we could do it, to answer your very complex question, is try and dampen asylum by having a robust refugee program abroad. Another way we could do it is having more categories that allow people to come here. If you can invest $1.2 million into a qualified project in America, you can buy a green card for yourself and for all your family members.
Wow.
And my firm will be happy to help you out if that's what you want to do. We do that kind of stuff. We do all immigration. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there is nothing intrinsically more meritorious about someone who can invest $1.2 million in America than there is with the next Elon Musk or the next Steve Jobs.
Absolutely. No, that's a phenomenal answer. I really appreciate that. And I'm definitely thankful that I was able to locate you and get you here on the podcast today, because this has been an awesome discussion. I really appreciate your time. I do want to just end with giving you an opportunity to be able to tell a little bit about your podcast, how often you air episodes, where they can find you at. Maybe you just want to give that information to the listeners.
I appreciate that. And I guess the problem with me is once I start talking, I can't stop. I am a lawyer after all. But my podcast, we're only on the 11th episode. We're on the 12th episode. It'll be next Monday. It's called The Immigration Review. It's called The Immigration Review. It's available on the Kurzban website where I work for at Kurzban, Tetzeli and Pratt, kktplaw.com. And it's available on all podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the good stuff. And what it does is it analyzes and it describes every published decision out of the circuit courts of appeals in immigration that happens every week. And it talks about practice pointers, and it talks about the stories behind those decisions. And just to step back a little bit, because if you're not an attorney, that's a bit weird. There are essentially 12 appellate circuit courts of appeals right below the Supreme Court in this country. The first, second, third, fourth, all the way up to the 11th Circuit. And then there's the D.C. Circuit. But the D.C. Circuit doesn't do immigration cases, really. So what I do is I look at the published precedential decisions that come out of the first through the 11th circuits every week. There's usually between 4 and 7. And those decisions are changing the law every single day. And I'm describing those decisions, how that can help immigration attorneys, non-immigration attorneys, and just interesting because the stories behind these people, and this goes to what you were saying at the beginning of the podcast, Bill, these people are people.
Right.
And their case is used to change the law in some way, either positively or negatively for non-citizens, but they become a case citation. I cite to these people in my briefs. I cite to their cases, but you never really think about the people. So I'm trying to humanize the people behind these decisions, and I'm trying to give practice pointers and explain how immigration law works in this country. So it's the Immigration Review. We have new episodes every Monday. We're going to be on our 12th episode, 13th episode, if you include the episode where my boss was talking about the DACA decision. We're getting great feedback, and it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, I can certainly understand why. You've been an awesome guest on here today. And with you being a lawyer and me being a former preacher, I think it's amazing that we kept it under an hour. So that's amazing.
We just need to find someone to walk into a bar with, and we'll have
that's it.
We'll have a great. That's right.
That's it.
We'll be great.
That's right. Well, thank you so much again for coming on today. I do want to let the listeners know that you can find ReThinking Podcast on anchor.fm/Bill-Crocker. Also, we are on iHeartRadio and all other listening platforms as well. We certainly appreciate the listeners, and you can find us on Twitter at ReThinkingPodC1 and on Facebook as well. And then we're on Instagram at Bill for Earth. So thank you again, Kevin. I really appreciate you coming on. I will be putting up links that he shared with me today. I'll be getting in touch with him after. And I'll get him to give me some links, and I'll put them up on the Twitter and on the Facebook. That way you can find them easily there. And like I say, again, I just really appreciate you coming on here and talking with me today about immigration.
Thank you, Bill. It's been a pleasure. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
So there you have it. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back next Monday for a brand new discussion. Until then, I'm Kevin A. Gregg, bringing you the Immigration Review.